Magandang gabi sa ating lahat. Once again, welcome to the Vicente Soto Lecture Series. For those who have only recently joined us, this series focuses on Cebu's literary, cultural, and historical heritage. Over the past 2 years, we've had the privilege of learning from esteemed researchers and writers on various aspects of Cebuano studies, including pre-war Cebuano fantasy novels, special research archives, Cebuano Christmas traditions, local cinema studies, Cebuano poetry, history, and traditions. Today, we have the privilege of welcoming a respected guest, Mr. Francis Luis Torres, who will be sharing valuable insights with us. But before we begin, let's warmly welcome Mr. Jose Antonio Dasig, who will officially start today's proceedings.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, or good afternoon in the case of Mr. Francis. So a warm and heartfelt welcome to every one of you as we gather here today for the 10th installment of the Vicente Soto Lecture Series 2023, organized by the Cebuano Studies Center of the University of San Carlos. So to give you a bit of background, the Cebuano Studies Center is at its heart a center for research on all aspects of Cebuano culture. So it functions as a special library to house the various source materials on Cebu as well as the predominantly Cebuano-speaking areas in the country. So it also acts as a research center devoted to studies on Cebu, specifically in areas of the humanities and the social sciences, while also acting as a sort of special office that assists in the promotion of Cebuano culture and the arts. So throughout the years, we can say that the Cebuano Study Center has played an active role in enhancing cultural awareness within the Cebuano community, not only through its functions as a public library and a center of educational activities, but also through the assistance it has extended to local governments and various community associations. So indeed, the Cebuano Study Center has or stands as a beacon of dedication, research, and preservation in its unwavering commitment to Cebuano culture. One such example of that commitment is this monthly Vicente Soto lecture series, revived under the directorship of Dr. Hope Savanpanyu. So, the monthly lecture series aims to add to the discourse on Cebuano culture, arts, and history. So, with these lectures, the center hopes to make the rich cultural heritage of Cebu more visible to the general public and hopefully create avenues where people can discuss with various esteemed speakers about Cebuano studies. So today we have the honor to listen to a lecture from one such expert steeped in knowledge about Cebuano literature and culture, Mr. Francis Luis Torres, who will be discussing his paper entitled Modernizing the Bayot during the American Colonial Period. So we hope that through this lecture, you, our dear viewers, gain a deeper appreciation for Cebuano identity. So on behalf of the Cebuano Study Center, I welcome you all today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jose, for your warm welcome. Now, we've arrived at the highly anticipated part of our event. I'd like to highlight that after the presentation, we'll have an open forum, providing you with a chance to actively engage by asking your questions. Feel free to use the chat box to share your inquiries as the lecture goes on, and we'll discuss them in the interactive session. Without any more delay, it is my honor to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Francis Luis M. Torres. Is currently pursuing a PhD in Cultural Studies in Asia through the joint PhD program at the National University of Singapore and King's College London. His academic pursuits involve extensive research and discussions on Filipino and Cebuano queer and gay history and culture. Additionally, his areas of expertise encompass new media, Asian gay rural criticism, digital cultures, and queer studies in Asia. Previously, he served as an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines in Cebu, where he imparted knowledge in creative writing, English, communication, and literature discourse. Please help me welcome Mr. Francis Luis Torres.
Ay, wait sa nagkalit-ulit. Ay, sorry. Nagka-problema akong second screen. I mean, good evening, everybody. Let me just sort things out first before I start my discussion. Timing kayo pag-introduce akong iPad naglinabad. But anyway, yeah, good evening, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Let me share. Zoom. Okay, ano ba ito? Dara. Ano siya? Makita akong notes or ang slides ra? Or ang slides ra, no?
Ang slides na, sir.
Okay, yes. Finally, hi. So anyway, this is it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being part of this lecture. I appreciate I was informed just today na it happens to be a long weekend and this happens to be like in the middle of the night basically. So I really appreciate you attending this lecture. So especially, again, gabi, it's afternoon here and things aren't really at the best, conditions. It's quite gloomy here and all. But in any case, before I start my short discussion, I would like to thank Dr. Hope, who apparently isn't here, and the rest of the Cebuano Study Center team for giving me a platform to share what I've been working on since, ever. So special mention also goes to the CSC library, again, to Dr. Hope for giving me access to old materials. I mean, which I have skimmed through for months. So without this opportunity, this research wouldn't have been possible. So these pictures you see are from my research in the library. So make good, especially if you're from USC, please make good use of the library. So anyway, let's begin. So before I start my discussion, I will give you a general idea of what I will present tonight. So my talking points would largely revolve around the Biot and his inscriptions or his representation during the American colonial period. I essentially argue that the American colonial period is the most significant time of Philippine gay culture and history because what we know about the Biot and probably extending to other gay identities in the Philippines would stem from this period. So three critical movements that shifted the Biot signification also happened during this time, which I will detail later. Ultimately, this marks the Biot's changing definition from exclusively religious to more liberal, secular, and scientific ones. So in this sense, the Biot is quote unquote modernized. So for this presentation, I got most of my discussion from Nueva Fuerza or Bagong Kusog, which, if I'm not mistaken, is already digitized is digitized and is available in the Cebuano Study Center website. So again, make good use of that. So Bagong Kusog is basically a pre-war Cebuano weekly, if I'm not mistaken, newspaper published between 1915 and 1941. So I have chosen this periodical since, according to national artist Risil Mujares, it was arguably one of the most essential publications at the time, especially in Cebu. So its publisher and editor, Vicente Rama, garnered respect and support from writers because he fostered popular interest in Sugbuanon writing, which would later, generate more texts that can be published in the newspaper. So I performed data scraping basically by skimming through all available copies of the Bagong Kusog. And once I found the word Bayot, I would catalog and document them. So images showing cross-dressing men or effeminate-looking guys would be included in the data collection. So ultimately, I collected several newspaper articles, opinion pieces, jokes, and editorial cartoons. Again, on a side note, including what you are and will be seeing on the slides. So I have collected a few short stories, but they will not be included in the analysis as I believe they should be given a different treatment and examination. So this one is more cultural. You go short stories, it becomes a little more technical, formal, and yeah. So in any case, that will not be included in this in tonight's discussion. So I define the following terms for the presentation as follows. So Bayot is defined as an effeminate male homosexual. He is also defined as a gay man. So I'm just trying to articulate this, given that in the West, gayness doesn't necessarily have to be a man or biologically a cis man, basically. So all these Western concepts, no, making fuzzy things of our small part of the world. But in any way, it does not have a direct translations to English though, so with the word biot. So, which brings about critical points of discussion, and probably I hope some of you might want to ask, so we can discuss it further. Thus, assigning a pronoun would be problematic. So at least for this presentation, I used the masculine pronouns to describe him as he was traditionally defined as such. I borrowed the definition of modernity from Michel Foucault, who in Discipline and Punish refers to as a category defined by the tendency to go against traditions and establish norms, the faith in scientific and technological progress, and the emphasis on individual freedom and rights, and the emergence of nation states and public education. So when I say the Bayot is modernized, I get the idea of modernity from Foucault, from the book Discipline and Punish. So again, before I proceed, let me emphasize that I am dealing with historical texts. So, kumbaga, dili pa ni siya woke, no? So, therefore, some of them will sound or will be racist and sexist, especially with regards to the Bayot, no? So, again, for those who are online, your discretion is advised. So, for the outline, so aside from the introduction, which I was just talking now, this presentation will chronicle the beginnings of the modern consciousness that led to examining the Bayot in three different themes or categories or movements: science, the idea of gender categories, and nationalism. So consequently, the Bayot constantly haunts modernity by interrogating the hegemony of biology and intellectual scientism, the dominance of masculinity as the basis for gender categories, and the homogeneity of the nation. So overall, the Bayot is Americanized, which would become the identity's ethos. So now we proceed to like the modern era. So it cannot be discounted that modernity in the Philippines started during the late 19th century. In Mojaras's Brains of the Nation, he writes about the Filipino intelligentsia, their production of modern knowledge, and its implications for Philippine epistemology. So before the 19th century, missionaries worked within, and I quote, worked within received intellectual frames of biblical history and Europe's speculative sciences on race and religion, end quote. So the rise of civil government and modern commerce hastened the, quote, formation of secular scientific discourse outside the religious communities, end quote. So all from Mojares. So thus in the late 19th century, scientists and scholars started studying about the Philippines. So there were efforts to secularize and nationalize education in the Philippines, but it was driven by ideas of political reform and native rights. I mean, you know your Philippine history, right? In the late 19th century, when the Filipinos started to revolt, and thus ideas of nationalism emerged. So it would influence Filipino intellectuals to the rise of Philippine nationalism to establish a scientific and secular education for Filipinos. And I think there were efforts to do it by Filipinos. So while efforts for modernity started in the late 19th century, the arrival of the Americans brought changes in the Philippines that resulted in the influx of liberal ideas, the establishment of public education, and the rise of the regional presses. When I say regional here, I mean like outside Manila region. Okay, so that slowly modernized Filipino consciousness. Yet they also started. The Americans also started restudying the archipelago for, quote, proper management. So James Leroy dismissed the value of locally produced knowledge, described Filipino intellectuals to be backward, and claimed that the modern era, as he described it, started during American rule. So this historical context is crucial because it means that the framing of the Bayot within a modernist language was made even before the arrival of the Americans, like from the Filipinos with their modernist efforts. To mention that modernism happened during the American colonial rule effaces an integral part of Philippine intellectual history. Yet one thing is clear here. So the Bayot was never exclusively framed within a singular discourse, and in that sense, before a religious discourse. No? So through modernity, the Bayot was articulated within not only the language of intellectual scientism, but also the language of secularism and nationalism. So the modernist ethos is similar to what Michel Foucault described in his seminal work, The History of Sexuality, which discusses 19th century European homosexuality. So again, if you haven't read the book, please do. So medicine here, in that sense, displaced religion as the center of sexual discourse that supplemented traditional or religious sexual practices. So he concludes, I mean, Foucault concludes that medicalizing marriage and reproduction creates the homosexual who becomes, quote, a personage, a past, a case history, and a childhood, a life form, and a morphology with an indiscrete anatomy and possibly a mysterious physiology, unquote. So sodomy was, as a result, internalized, thereby making the homosexual an introvert, an invert, meaning a woman trapped in a man's body. So from a sodomite, the Bayot as a homosexual was born. So now we look into, say, the medical discourse that has overtaken the Bayot. So by bringing modern knowledge, including natural sciences and psychoanalysis to the Philippines, the American period saw the emergence of the Bayot as an invert. Again, he is a man trapped in a woman's body. So we've heard this phrase before, right? So I hope. So this period witnessed the biomedicalization of the Philippine effeminate homosexual, or of the Bayot, basically. So as a result, he was not only the product of scientific speculation, but also labeled physiologically and mentally sick. So buang siya, napadyo siya sakit, no? So however, it can be said that his inversion was never complete. Here I argue, Francis, because people still think of him as an effeminate. So here becomes the problem. So this characteristic was reflective of the Hispanic gay identity, which was seen in multiple dictionaries before. I mean, these dictionaries, sometimes you can see it as a Cebuano Studies Center. Market kay ko sa center anyway, including De La Encarnacion's dictionary, which is like, it's there in print, no? So here, discussions associated with identities of effeminacy also associate them with like mystery, queerness, nature, and all those sorts of things. Again, this is something like is beyond the scope of tonight's discussion, but I'm sure that there's tons of stuff out there online. But in any case, there's that. So there's this article entitled "Bayot nga kuno na mabdus nakapagubot pag-ayo." So a bayot allegedly pregnant causes great commotion in the 1930s, which talked about Balbino Igot, a man who got pregnant after being intimate with a Moro. So he left his wife and kids in Cebu so doctors and the Bishop of Cebu could examine him. I mean, Balbino Igot, okay? So one doctor said that if a man could acquire feminine characteristics, then he could get pregnant. Other doctors thought he was just crazy, since it was a scientific impossibility. But the Bishop of Cebu took a different approach. He punished Igot with 25 lashes for being intimate with a Moro. I hope you know what a Moro means, no? So here, his inversion meant liminality. So Igot's case is not only a preview of how people perceive him, but also a reflection of what the Bayot was at the time. So there's also another article entitled "Ang mga taong bayot buang-buang." So bayots are crazy, no? He was described as, again, physiologically and mentally sick. So the author, Domingo Requerme, talked about how homosexuality was strongly associated with insanity. He also mentioned that someone could become bayot if they had relatives who were bayot, since it ran in the blood. So aside from insanity, there were carriers of sexually transmitted diseases, including gonorrhea and syphilis, which I think were lethal before. So you get to see here that bayotness is not necessarily innately within you. It's also biological. It's also genetic, you know? So the bayot was therefore stigmatized due to his disruption against heteronormativity. Heteronormativity being the idea that what is normal, what is accepted is based on a heterosexual standard. So by doing so, he threatened the commonsensical notions of reproduction, marriage, and sexual acts, as well as caused paranoia and the spreading of disease in the community. However, again, his biomedicalization was never the singular language that the Bayot articulated. So due to the secularizing press, people had the opportunity to share their views and opinions about the Bayot. So say again, from the Bagong Kusog, the community still saw the Bayot as an effeminate, a key characteristic in the late 19th century gay identity, which was a residue of the previous Hispanic social order. So this illustration, as you see on the left, of your screen. I guess, yeah, left. No, talked about the person's physical attributes while insinuating sexual oddity. So the character could be considered ambiguous to invoke laughter because what appeared to be masculine shoes and legs were described femininely or described as femininity. So the person was judged due to his appearance and behavior, not exclusively on their biology. So it can be said that the Bayet's inversion, again, was incomplete. To say that the birth of the Bayet as a homosexual, as a species, as Foucault would describe it, did not seem to be the case. So his effeminacy supplemented this lack and established the Bayet that people know today. That is, he is not only a combination of two sexes, but of two genders. Perceiving the Bayet as a gender marker is what traditional viewpoints tend to lean on. So put simply, the Spaniards established this idea, like, the Bayet as a combination of two genders. So it might explain, again, Garcia's inquiry about the already blurred relationship between gender and sexual orientation. So here, in this sense, the Bayet remained effeminate. And so we look into this. So the Bayet remained a category of gender as it is much a category of sexual orientation, as was the case during the Spanish colonial period. So this hybrid definition made him a reification or a manifestation of abstract concepts that reimagined gender categories, specifically in ideas about masculinity and nationalism. So again, one remarkable article, Unsa ang Bayot, entitled Unsa ang Bayot, was written by Leod Salazar, who detailed his view on the Bayot. I think this is from the Freeman. Again, I got this from the Cebuano Studies Center. Woo, make good use of the library. So he wrote characteristics of the Bayot by continuing the dialogue between Primo de Solis and Amelia Villanueva, whose articles I could not locate. So it's just this. Filled with strange and ridiculous metaphors, he declared that the Bayot was neither a man nor a woman and employed multiple analogies to help readers understand his argument. Despite being more feminine, the Bayot could never be a woman due to his male biological marker, basically his penis, and was portrayed to be the woman's perverted version. Moreover, there were subtle hints of xenophobia in Salazar's article. So, for instance, if the woman came from a man's rib, as is with the Bible story, you're from US, you should know this. The Bayot would come from an Indian goat's rib. So, I think he also came from kanang buak na bamboo, Chinese bamboo. So like you see these things like Moro, Chinese, Indian things. So again, hints of xenophobia. So based on Salazar's article, one could be a Bayot based on his distinct appearance and behavior. So ultimately, his analysis predominantly revolved around his gender, albeit his elusive definition of him. Because in this case, Salazar didn't really define what the Bayot is. He just used multiple metaphors about the Bayot. So he did not interview any Bayot, but would base his descriptions on what he generally understood. So before I proceed to the next slide, on the right screen is Balbino Igot, the one you see on the slide. So this picture would be the earliest photo I've seen on the Bayot. So there's that. Again, Freeman. It's at the CSC. So anyway, so this resulted in the inquiry into ideas of masculinity. One gets the idea that the ideal man is not and must not only be heterosexual, but also has to be masculine. So, however, the idea of the ideal man was not left unquestioned. I found this one comical story. If you've seen Bagong Kusog, there are sections called PL lang, so like random jokes, no? So one comical story narrated about two women who were approached by men in a carnival one night, so eventually leading to something intimate. However, these guys found that they were in fact Bayots, so the men immediately fled and avoided their company. So this joke indicates that the idea of masculinity appeared unfazed and uncorrupted in the face of inquiry. So meaning is if you think about it, the story would question the masculinity of these men, because why were they attracted to the Bayot? But they weren't really Bayot because they appeared and looked feminine. But again, there's this it's quite a Filipino thing if you really think about it, that if a guy, a straight guy, becomes intimate or something, okay, San Carlos Mani, like, how do I put it? Like, becomes intimate, sexually intimate with a bayot, he maintains his masculinity. So, murag last straight gihapon siya. No, so there's that. But in any way, so as a result, the bayot became demands other. You know, so man bayot. It might sound simplistic, but this was often the case. So yet any deviation from the prescribed notions of masculinity might result in emasculation or effeminization. But it does not necessarily equate to bayotness. So one example is the slacker. So this is an article about the slacker. So he was financially dependent on others, cowardly, soft, and selfish. So a slacker would be described as such. So however, in another article, the slacker was defined as a bayot. So specifically written with a political context, ang matuod na slacker, that's the title of the article, criticized Osmeña for hiding during the Spanish Revolution by wearing women's clothes. Being so made him bayot because he was again cowardly, he was soft, he ran away from Cebu City to the countryside to hide during the Spanish Revolution, so to speak. So as a result, effeminacy became a signifier of cowardice, non-patriotism, and moral bankruptcy. So the bayot was no longer framed exclusively within gender and sexuality or sexual orientation. So here, in this case, the bayot is a product of an amalgamation of femininity and masculinity and transformed him into the effeminate male homosexual that the Filipinos know of him today. So moreover, the bayot became a signifier of two binaries wherein its contradictions are articulated, whether on social conditions, gender, or politics. So perhaps this explains why he became a metaphor for the nation, which we will be in our third part. Oh, paspas rata. Paspas ako. So based on the different examples, no, the bayot articulated the society's other as he evoked hints of xenophobia. Again, we've discussed this earlier on xenophobia. So at a time when the Philippines pushed for independence and self-determination, he was the symbol of non-patriotism and betrayal. So he was framed as an alien rooted in a community's culture and history. Ultimately, he became a nation's signifier of conflicting ideologies and, in effect, reimagined the limits and conception of an imagined community. So again, nation as imagined community, I'm referring to Benedict Anderson's work here. So again, if you have time, please do read. So numerous examples demonstrate the bayot's affinity with the foreign, mystical, and the countryside. So for example, there was a headline. So this is an article from Bagong Kusig, as in like a headline meaning it was the front page news, no, where a bayot was abducted by a diwata because she was attracted to him. So she would take him into the supernatural world, which would physically strain the bayot. So kapuyon ang bayot nga kaon siya. And I think if I remember in the article, he would experience nightmares. I think again, if my memory serves me right, because again, it's straining, it's tiring to him, and at the same time, he doesn't want women. Okay, bayot lagi. So eventually, the bayot decided to solve this problem. So his family had to consult an albularyo to help him fix it. So since then, the bayot could not approach him, and she would look at him from afar. So this is news, by the way. So he was therefore relegated to the margins. So this position situates him at the crossroads of a binary. So basically, he's in between the binary at the third space, so to speak. No, at the front line of ongoing changes the nation is experiencing while trying to preserve its prevailing social order. So by remaining marginal, bayots threaten the foundations that constitute reality. I mean, look at the article I just mentioned, you know, like what's real here. So he often mimics the values and norms of Cebu's pre-war society expressed through hermaphroditism and effeminacy, among others. So again, the idea of effeminacy comes from from the Spanish colonial order, and then you have homosexuality within the American colonial order. So he's a mix of both. That's the mess. So one example here, we see not this one, but the another article I saw entitled "Una Bandera Filipina Binabayi," or effeminate, or the Filipino flag is effeminate. So because the article focused on a proposal from a congressman to combine American and Philippine flags. So the newspaper article, again, I think this was in Bagong Kusog, criticized this ridiculous proposal because it was hermaphrodite and unpatriotic, because why would you combine Filipino and American flags? No, because again, that was the proposal. So it did not, according to the article, it did not reflect the people's clamor for a more patriotic flag. So another article with a picture on the right, I think if you can see my screen, I hope you do know kung okay pa rin. So America is una nación afeminada. Again, this is again in Bagong Kusog, or what would they call before Nueva Fuerza Church. Castilian Spanish bi ako no. But anyway, so it's this article where this article discusses how America has become effeminized because it has focused less on its military might. Instead, the country focused their efforts on life's pleasures. So in this instance, the article criticized America for being weak and unpatriotic. So we get this sense that for Filipino patriots, having ties with Americans makes someone effeminate. Having this idea should give us no surprise that the likes of Ismeña, who served under the Commonwealth government during that colonial period, would have been a subject of ridicule and criticism from a periodical like Bagong Kusog. So, which brings me here. So as you've seen in my slides until now, Osmeña was portrayed as a man who wore barot saya. So there's that. So which characterizes him as a bayot. So the newspaper repetitively satirized pressing social issues through marriage. So like this one. If you also go through different Bagong Kusog publications like prints, again, they're all digitized at the CSC website. You get to see Osmeña and Quezon as couples. And sometimes they would have Rojas as their child. So it depends on the issue at hand. No? So the context and the illustration varies. So based on the numerous editorial cartoons, the Bayot always deviated from the monogamous relationship depicted by the political system of the Philippines to a marriage, since these artworks made the issues relatable to readers. So perhaps it depicted how dominant institutions like the nation were founded in heteronormativity as well. So yet the Bayot plays around these institutions by being unfaithful to his husband Quezon and cuddling with the Americans, thereby reflecting his need for self-determination. So the fact alone that an editorial cartoon that showed a same-sex marriage was considered perversion at the time. So no, because I was thinking while reading through my script na, I think I have there's this illustration where Osmeña was talking to some American politician because he was trying to cuddle with him, betraying his quote-unquote husband, Quezon, because they were trying to make a deal. No, so Osmeña was undermining Quezon's authority by directly dealing with the Americans. So the editorial cartoon portrayed it as Osmeña having affairs with another man, with the Americans, so to speak. So his marginal location allowed him to negotiate his positionality, which reflected the Bayot's performativity. So performativity, like I hope your students, you probably guessed this. If not, again, ask away. So the myth of Osmeña as a metaphor for the nation reflected the community's insecurities and fears, or the Cebuano community's insecurities and fears. So by being hybrid, he questioned the man-woman, foreign-local, and outsider-insider binaries and reified their perversities. So for example, like how, Cebuanos are xenophobic, how racist we are, no? So the right finds ways to dismantle the myth of the nation including its prescribed notions of sexuality, gender, and community from its own inchoate and dissonant history. His inscriptions continue to reimagine the nation. So when I say this, it usually means like who belongs within our community and who doesn't. So and the Bayot plays along these questions, which brings us to more or less our last part of the discussion. Ay, paspas ko. In any case, so the American colonial period subjected the Bayot to a modernizing milieu. His definition underwent three significant shifts: biomedicalization, secularization, and nationalism, due to the arrival of colonizers who brought public health and education amid the clamor for independence. So I firmly believe that the American colonial period remains the most significant period in historicizing the Bayot, because it witnessed the birth of, Cebuano gay culture. The way we understand our local gay cultures today would more or less resonate from this period. Again, that is my argument. So at the turn of the century, the modernizing project resulted in a lack of respect towards history, making previous forms of knowledge null and baroque, or kanang atong idea of baroque ba, like backward, baroque kaayo, affecting how we inscribe and perceive the Bayot until today. So this claim also comes after Garcia's statement. When I mean here, guys, Garcia, I mean Janiel Garcia, who's like the prominent gay scholar now in the Philippines, wherein he considered the 1960s as the period when gay culture emerged. I believe that it was during this period that framed the Bayot as an effeminate homosexual. So basically what I'm trying to imply here is, if Garcia says it started in the 1960s, what I'm saying here, it's way earlier than the 1960s. So as presented, this period also allowed the people to conceive and discuss the Bayot through jokes, opinions, letters, newspaper articles, and illustrations, thereby giving the readers a concept of what it means to be a Bayot. So apart from America's colonizing project, our Hispanic roots were cut because the Spanish colonizers treated inscribing or writing itself and public education differently, thereby limiting its access. So today, any Filipino archivist or researcher will find it challenging to examine old texts because Filipinos do not generally understand or know Spanish. So just a side note, no, like say for instance, when I was looking through Bagong Kusog, at least in this case, no, through Bagong Kusog, I think the first 5 or 6 years were all written in Spanish before it became bilingual and then eventually Cebuano. Again, you can see that if you look through Bagong Kusog. So at least in my case, it was so difficult to, wait, I think it started bilingual rather and then eventually Cebuano na tanan. So at least in my case, when I found, say, articles about, the Bayot in Spanish, I find it difficult to read. So it would take me some time to, I have a working knowledge on Spanish. So when I was reading through the texts, it's difficult for me to like immediately understand and read the text because again, I don't really use Spanish. So that always has been a problem. So if you're into this, like if you're a researcher looking into this, you have so many Spanish texts that remain to be examined, remain to be studied, and perhaps future researchers could look into that. So aside from that, the side note, so it is even more tragic now that the Bayot did not have the language to articulate himself. The heterosexual masculine man was and is always the speaking and writing agent. So what I mean here is we really didn't know if the works that I just presented were made by Bayots themselves. So there isn't really a means to knowing it because there's this also like a weird heteronormative assumption that everyone is straight until proven gay or something. We'd like to speculate with other people like Bayot siguro na siya or something, but at the end of the day, we also see that we just don't assume that people are gay. You know what I mean? And it's not appropriate because again, I don't want to be cancelled. Anyway, so there's that. So we don't assume people to be gay and we don't out people. So that's the case. So although it would be impossible to assert that the Bayot did not, again, it is not impossible that the Bayot did not speak. Perhaps he may have already articulated himself within this heteronormative language. So here I speculate, like, what if what if the articles that we've written, or the images we saw here were made by Bayuts themselves? We didn't know. So what takibaw ba? So again, here I speculate. So what has become of Bayut then would still resonate today. So one glaring example is how gays today try to imitate the American homosexual, or the idea of the American homosexual. So in this article by Dennis Altman entitled Rupture or Continuity, the Internationalization of Gay Identities, he describes a union between traditional and modern gay identities that constitute the contemporary gay identities in the Philippines. So again, he tries to describe, like, the idea of gay identities now is a hybrid of this global cosmopolitan LGBT order and local cultures. So it's a mix of both. So in this sense, the Bayot becomes a palimpsest of a dominant narrative that continually distorts and disowns him. In the guise of modernity, we only have traces of his past and articulations of his quote-unquote dehistoricized present from an excess of meanings from our culture. The haunting of the Bayot's past and the disconnect amid a dehistoricized present is America's continuing legacy to the Bayot. So I hope that you had a productive and academically fruitful night. Thank you so much for listening again. I appreciate you coming to this lecture despite on a late evening. No? And if I'm not mistaken, the moderator will open the door, or rather, for discussions and questions. So daghang salamat.
We have explored
Okay
the
na ta?
American arrival in the Philippines, which drove Cebuano's cultural modernization, introducing an American-centered ethos that secularized and nationalized social institutions like public health and education, reducing Catholic Church influence. These changes impacted views on sexuality and gender, particularly seen in the Bayot, an effeminate homosexual figure that underwent modernization, shaping its present identity. The lecture used historical text to detail how the Bayot was framed within biomedical, secularization, and nationalization, symbolizing hybridity resulting from power dynamics between various oppositions and influencing contemporary Cebuano gay literature, gay culture, I mean. Thank you, Mr. Torres, for that insightful lecture. Now, we've invited Mr. Torres to respond to the questions that all of you have shared in the chat box, if there are any. Our objective is to address as many of these inquiries considering the time constraints. Without any additional postponement, let us begin with the first question. So guys, if you have any questions, feel free lang to send sa chat box. We welcome your questions and thoughts on the lecture that was just given. We have a question here from Micaela from Bautista. Were there not any concept of lesbians? What is the difference between bayot and bakla?
I'll try to answer both questions now. The first one, yes, there are concepts of the idea. You see articles about lesbianism in the Bagong Kusog. Again, if you're interested, you can just go to the CSC website, na Bagong Kusog na tab, dito you just click. But it takes a while. I think if I'm not mistaken, I saw a few. Like kung gamay na gani sa bayot, mas gamay pa gini on lesbians. And then it's usually like women dressed as men, or sometimes they would talk about, like, yeah, I mean, you know what's quite interesting here, I'm thinking now, is it's quite different in the woman's case. Kay kung ang laki man dili magpakasal, na ay questions on sexuality. Ang babae gani dili magpakasal, di wala inana nga questions necessarily. Kay pwede mo siya like, she's just an old maid, she just wants to be alone. Kung ang laki di magpakasal, lahi na ang idea, bayot siguro na siya, no? So there's this dynamic that's going on. But again, there's a concept of lesbianism in the articles in Bagong Kusog. I'm just trying to remember. I just remember one talking about a Hollywood artist, a woman who was wearing men's clothes, men's suit and tie. So nagsuit and tie kuno siya nya lesbian kuno. I mean that's it. Very sparse, like ginagmay ba ginagmay. So I hope I answered your first question. The second question here becomes a very interesting discussion altogether. The difference between the bayot and bakla, the way I see it, no, is there any kung na difference, I should say yes, for the simple reason nga ang usa Cebuano, ang usa di. But I'll just put it like this: more or less they're the same, but at the same time they're different. So again, the same, they're effeminate homosexuals, this and that. So this is already established, and we know. When it comes to difference, I'm trying to think. Aside from the fact that it's Cebuano, I think it's more or less the development of the idea. Because if we take into consideration cultural contexts, no, when these ideas are formed, so to speak. So say for instance, the bayot as a term itself existed, or at least it was documented in Passion Bato. Garcia talks about this, and many other gay scholars, especially those who are based in UP Diliman. Kanaging, di ba, si Jesus Bato ay nababakla. So it started as an idea of which means cowardice, was afraid or coward ba, when I think this was at the part when Jesus was taken to be imprisoned, no? So si Jesus, si Jesus ay nababakla. So that term itself would there's that, no, but at the same time the bayot manggod would have a different kind of origin, so to speak, because when you say bayot, nana mo siya ideas of effeminacy and homosexuality, which didn't happen in the bakla, at least if you look at it historically. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, really, because they're also quite the same. I mean, and this is why perhaps future researchers would like to look into, because I was trying to skim through these materials, no, lisod man, lisod siya i-distinguish, but at the same time, naa siya mga distinguishing characteristics. So I hope I answered your question. So there's that. I think there's so many. Do I read or does the moderator read?
I'll read it lang, Mr. Doris.
Sige.
I hope that answers your question, Miss Aline. We have another question here from Miss Leia. How does the evolution of the Bayat identity during the American colonial period provide context to current debates or controversies surrounding LGBTQ plus identities in the Philippines?
Like this one, I find difficult to answer in a sense now, like what debates or controversies are you really referring here to? But say for instance, no, let's say on legalizing marriage, or I don't know, yeah, legalizing or not legal, or not some controversy. Would there be an example here? So I'll think na lang, sige, marriage. Sige, marriage. So the idea manggod, at least in the West, you see it like in the West, na manggod siya history of illegalizing homosexuality before de-illegalizing it, so not making it illegal. Now you have laws that make them legal, at least in the West. Here where I am, it's quite legal, no? So there's that. In our case, wala mo gud siya history of homosexuality as illegal. It is morally incorrect, yes, but it's not illegal. So now with this idea manggod nga marriage is supposedly a Catholic institution, no? So we see marriage. I mean, there are civil and religious marriages, no, and in the Philippines we don't really distinguish properly, because kung magpakasal ka, usually duha naman na 2-in-1. No, kung nang makakita mo ni kasal naman ni pirma-pirma diha. So it's also legal and religious. And here it's quite just in the West it's more civil, no. So our idea of legalizing things, say marriage in the Philippines, may be different. We see it differently because what mo the idea of homosexuality as illegal? I think that's one. And then there's also this idea that when you say progress, no, in the LGBT community, it's usually laws that protect them. So again, there's this liberal, progressive, quite legal-based movement no, within the LGBT movement in the West. Wala na diri sa Philippines o diha rather sa Philippines kay there was no event that made it so. And so we now think of it in a sense that what is progress, LGBT progress in the Philippines? Is it rights-based? Is it not rights-based? So na disjunct, so to speak, between Western and Philippine LGBT movement. So I hope klaro na to, no? But yes, it's probably one of those controversies of debates on surrounding the LGBT. So anyway, yeah. I kisa mo to si Leia. I hope I answered you and I answered your question, Leia. Klaro na ba to? Di. But anyway, yes, moderator.
I hope
Okay,
that
apparently ikaw
answers
din
your
tigbasag question.
I hope that answers your question, Miss Leia. We have another question here from Mr. Jose. From your research/observations, how do modern day perceptions and representations of the Bayot in modern Cebuano society compare to those during the American colonial period?
I mean, at least no. I mean, you can really see. I mean, you saw what I saw, or at least a presentation. But from before, no, I think before it was, di mo good siya, how do I put it? Again, I don't want to be canceled, no, but more or less like at least mas woke man karon, no. So if you see these examples, they were quite racist, they were quite sexist. I mean, I didn't show you the entire thing because I was thinking kato akong lecture was like 20-30 minutes because I also wanted it to be short kay lagi gabi na diha. But in any case, like really bad examples, like say for instance, there was this joke, very short joke, mga 3-5 lines ba to? Gaingon nga tanang bayot gikan kuno sa Argao, Dalagete ug sa Bulhoon ba to kay ang first kuno nga bayot ka po gikan hang area. That's the joke. So I'm like, this isn't even funny for me. I mean, probably sa inyo no funny. I don't know, but nagbasa ko may naka-funny ani, di man siya funny, but it's supposed to be a joke, but there's not. So how do I put it? It was more tone deaf before nga murag kay lagi the Bayot weren't given as much respect as they were now, or history has shown that documents from the past have shown that Bayot like figures were respected and revered, like namaning discussions sa babaylan, no. Again, I don't want really to touch on that because I think I've written something about like that na publish an article ana somewhere. So there's that. So you can just Google it. But so again, perceptions, we're more tolerant, we're more respectful of human beings, which is a good thing. We tend to be more accepting now compared before nga sa una gyud. I'm sure wala siguro ni out. I mean, na si Balbino Igot but no to gilatigo man sa pare. Like wow, surprised. Okay, imagine na gilatik ko dili tungod kay buang-buang siya, dili tungod nakigdug siya sa moro. So again, so yeah, these are the things that differ before and now. Yes, moderator.
I hope that answers your query, Mr. Jose. I have a question from me actually.
Okay.
Is the absence of LGBTQ plus literature or topics in school contributing to the perpetuation of heteronormativity?
I guess so, because like the idea of heteronormativity, like it frames a certain perception into what is accepted and what isn't, and then those that go beyond it are silenced, effaced, blurred. Like I think all of the synonyms related to it, no. So there's that. So when you say absence here, I'm assuming nga it's not as prominent as other literatures, no. So yes, heteronormativity does affect in that regard. So now say I'm thinking I don't know, like, are you a lit student or wala lang? You're just someone random na lang online something. Like if you're a lit student, you would know the idea of canon building. Like did Ma'am Hope discuss to you on canon building? Are you a student? I assume you're a student, but you're not, no?
Yes, I'm a student.
Pero lit student ka, dili.
No, I'm in senior high school po.
Oh, senior high. Okay, so sige, kana mas tindot ng example. You know, senior high, no, na mo lit 11 book katong nipis nga brown, no? Anyway, so kana nga book. So on canon building, so when I mean here by canon building, at least for younger kids like yourself, now you think no kani nga libro kani nga ay four themes no sa to loving sa basta kanang libro nga sa senior high sa San Carlos, I assume San Carlos kano. Naman yung mga stories diha, di ba? Kanang nya naa di mga lessons. Ang imo now you question yourself, nganong kanima nga stories? Why are these stories in the book? Why not other stories? There are so many stories in Cebuano or in the Philippines that they're not included in the textbook. Why is that so? So, you know, heteronormativity more or less filters that way because when you think of aesthetics, when you think of, you know, readability, do you think that LGBT texts would be read more than, say, the quote-unquote classics? I don't know. Probably yes, probably no. But in this case, probably not. No? So, there's that one ba, like, because the idea of heteronormativity, it's quite ideological, so it's very subtle. So, the idea mo like we just tend to accept things as they are when in fact it's basically a product of so many multiple processes, multiple ideologies that filters it. So kanang naasin yung textbook, I'm not saying sayop ang textbook. It's more like kanang how does heteronormativity operate in this way? No, so it filters, you know, texts by LGBT writers. For instance, that's one. I'm also thinking at least in Cebuano literature, no, at least in the Cebuano Study Center, kinsa may gabuhat aning mga queer-related studies. I mean, besides me, pero wala naman siguro sa bayot. I don't know, murag nato if someone was interested supposedly in kanang tumboy by the idea of lesbianism in Cebuano literature, Cebuano culture, but again, it's quite difficult because the texts are very few. As in like, sa pila na ka years ang bagong kusog, pila na to kung nakita, no more than 10, I think. So, there's that. So again, the silencing or the effacing continues and perpetuates because of heteronormativity. So, yes. So, yes. So, I mean, I was reading your question, so yes. Simple answer, TLDR, yes.
Thank you. That answers my question. Next up is we have another question from Mr. Jose. Would you say that Sword Speak or Philippine Gay Lingo can now be considered as an identifying marker for members of the local LGBTQ plus community? Considering you mentioned that there was no way to identify them just from the written text/literature back then. Was this not present back then?
On gay lingo, at least during the American colonial period, wala pa na siya. Not that I know, not that I remember, not that I've seen. So, if you're interested, say on gay lingo, no, there's this study by Hart, Don B. Hart, and Harriet Hart. I assume she must be his wife, no. But in any case, Hart and Hart, na study 1990, which published about the Visayan Sword Speak. I think it's si Jose Dasig Manino nara na si mong workplace dong nga maukay ra na dito nga wherein, you know, he talks about the Sword Speak pero dili the idea of Sword Speak wasn't as sophisticated, quote unquote, as it is now. When I say sophisticated, dili pa siya na naka-intricate bang nadyo system in place kay Cebuano Sword Speak as we know today. Kaya di ba namnay ka ng ilab-ilab ka ng balihon ko na ang Cebuano words and then you add a few fluffs here and there, no? Or you know, to make it sound complicated, ridiculous, to the point that it becomes jargon-like. So jargon-like meaning like it's a secret language of sorts, meaning jargon meaning like secret language that is only a few groups of people understand. wala lang kinaka-realize ba namday senior high diri. So there's that, no? So that's a jargon. So only specific groups of people use these sort of languages. So that's a jargon. So there wasn't really back then. Is gay lingo considered a marker now? Definitely. I mean, but you know what's interesting, at least in Cebu, okay, the entry to gay lingo, Cebuano gay lingo, is so easy as long as you know how to reverse words. I mean, that's the basic premise, di ba, sa Cebuano gay lingo. Imura siyang balihon. So you see that, and then you also see straight people no using you know Cebuano gay lingo. So makita ra naara kanang. So is it a marker therefore of LGBTQ plus people or of the community? It used to be, but I'm not so sure now because of this usage of straight people using it. So now this begs the question of what is the gay lingo? What is the gay language? The language of the LGBTQ plus people. When you say language here now, does it mean what's spoken or written, or language that is, you know, something more conceptual nga, more structural nga, kanaging the way people perceive you, behave? That's also language. I mean, yeah. So I'm sure that there will be markers kung makaingon jud ka bayot niyang tao. I mean, for instance, sexual orientation is one. So the way one behaves, that is like a person loving the same sex, can be considered, you know, homosexual, and in that sense, you know, can be a marker for that. But so like ganong Hans, myself is talking to myself. So why is it difficult to answer the question? Because now you see the dilemma that the idea of the bayot presents. No, it's so fluid that it wants to play along this line. So like, for example, we have a gay lingo here for gay people, but there's also a gay lingo that's used by straight people. But so is it a marker of the community? Then I don't know, because you see both communities using the same language, like at least its basic structure. No, so it likes to play, and it tries to quote unquote queer what we perceive to be straight and or gay, accepted, not accepted. So who belongs in the community, who doesn't belong in the community. So it blurs these lines to the point that you really don't know which is which. And I think that's how the world really is. It's more or less the human perception. I think, again, I don't want to dig deep. No, there's this, again, of many philosophical traditions that try to pigeonhole certain things at certain times. No, so the queerness of here is basically trying to dismantle these compartments, trying to see how the world really is, which is complicated and messy. So yeah, I hope I answered your question. Ana nasa tong si John Dasig. I hope that answers your question. But yes, I hope that answers your question.
Do we have any more questions here in the chat box? Don't be afraid to ask questions, guys.
No, don't be afraid, Charvo. Feel free. I mean, yeah, I just like the idea nga this is a very small group. Napagili akong kaila diri si Noel. Hi, Noel. Pero yeah, I mean, feel free to share your thoughts. Or if you don't have questions, you might have, you know, comments or something to share. Or don't make this like a mental health thing, no nga, mag-sharing lang ta sa tong life. No. I'm more like more like more related to the discussion, I hope. Kay kung wala, okay ra sad. Happy ra sad ko.
If there are no more questions, we can now move on to the next part of our program. If you have any more questions and wish for those questions to be answered, we encourage you to reach out to the Cebuano Studies Center page on Facebook, where we'll be happy to relay them to our esteemed speaker. Now it's time to extend our deepest thanks to our esteemed speaker. In recognition of his priceless input, we've prepared a certificate of appreciation. I invite Mr. Jose to step forward and share the contents of the certificate with us.
So hello again, everyone. Hello, Sir Francis. We would like to thank you once again for accepting our invitation and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our audience today. So it was really a pleasure to have you this evening. So to show our humble appreciation, we'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation. So the University of San Carlos Cebuano Study Center presents this certificate of appreciation to Mr. Francis Luis Torres for his lecture entitled Modernizing the Bayot during the American Colonial Period, during the Vicente Soto Lecture Series number 10, 2023, given this 28th day of October 2023 via Zoom. Signed by the Director of the Cebuano Study Center, Dr. Hope Saban-Panyu, and the Vice President for Academic Affairs of USC, Father Jesuraj Antonia Pen. I'd also like to extend a certificate of appreciation to our very lively moderator, Mr. Jan Nicodemus Dasigs, for serving again as moderator for our session tonight. Signed also by the Director of the Cebuano Study Center and the Vice President for Academic Affairs of USC. So thank you very much.
We once again express our sincere appreciation to Mr. Torres for his invaluable contributions during the Vicente Soto Lecture Series. As we near the conclusion of this remarkable session, I would like to gently remind all of the participants to complete the evaluation form in order to receive your certificate of participation. The link is available in the chat box.